In dwellings rich, a high hall and stately town, each on either edge of the woven wood, there 2 scions of vassals to the crown languished in lives bereft of all joy, good only to ruder eyes which saw, it seemed, renown. Yet these 2 were trapped by their world's ways, but would not let their futures drag them down to drown. Nellack, son to Nelladen, was the first. He was the heir to many southern lands, in speech and poise and courtly grace well versed, with arms trained as tradition did demand. His schooling was as a player's part rehearsed. From true valour and adventure he was banned, lest his bloodline be risked to know the worst. Day by day and year by year on it went. A life that bored him ceaselessly wore him down, till less and less were his young eyes bent to the birds in flight and the wolf wood's rim, which once had, maybe, called to him, "Relent, flee your slavish fate, to me dwell within, find your true fate in the woven wood, relent." A child's dream he deemed it be, and paid no heed. Then came his 16th birthday, a day of note. His father said he was to marry, with a bargain dowry too did he gloat, the daughter of a nearby land's marquis. A girl he knew did on his brother dote, and he on her, their love was plain to see, yet scorned to serve nobility's blind trote. With this latest nail his future seemed set, a cheerless march beside a captive wife, one day cursing children to the same, and yet a chance remained for him to sidestep this life, and possibly a kinder future get for his brother and betrothed. So much strife he could, with one great sacrifice, offset. His eyes returned to the far-off Wolfwood, and he thought that if he were to flee there now, to his brother his inheritance would be passed, and his engagement too endowed. He'd lose the life he resented for good, which his brother would bear better anyhow. But could he survive in the woven wood? Yet to actually leave proved for him hard. Home and family were not lightly shorn, and to leave seemed pure folly, to discard even his resented life, a firstborn. Why should he now cast himself down so far? For weeks he lingered, his heart torn, but in the end he left, for wood and stars. The second was the Lady Caleara, last of 6 children, unneeded, ignored. There was no swain nearby to marry her, no need to make her a higher house's ward. There was a gold convent which stood not far away, where many daughters had been stored, yet this was thought too cruel, the faith was marred. The lady had grown up alone within the halls of her family's ancient keep, too low to warrant their pride or chagrin. Her notice was scant, her schooling cheap. Her truest childhood friend was a jade pen, her only joy from worlds she carved in her sleep. Loneliness ever grew, her soul to darken. She almost never spoke, there was no need. Her kin she rarely saw, and most knew her not. A living ghost in her home, damned indeed, a wraith atop the battlements where oft she stood, looking to the ground. Would she be free with one more step, end the pain of her lot? At such a time came the whisper from the trees. Lift your eyes, see freedom on the horizon. Was this voice mere madness? She was not sure. Could she dwell in the woods? She did not care. Escape at last tore at her with its lure. The wolf woods promised freedom, so she'd go there. All she needed to survive she procured. A few small tokens of the keep she snared, and no one saw as she stepped out the door. Dark, heavy storm clouds hung over her track. A biting wind tore at her o'er the wide plains, and rain beat down upon her burdened back. Nature tested the girl's resolve through pain, but she pressed on, enduring earth's attack, for the trees at the horizon, to gain the life, the ceaseless sensation that she had lacked. A grudging sun emerged when she reached the trees at dawn. The whole night she'd spent in trudging, and though this new domain she wished to see, weary she stumbled only to a clearing, and on a stretch of sheltered grass she dreamed of sunlight and summer breezes whistling through boughs rife with nests and leaves of shining green. The ways of woodlands she had long studied. She knew enough to forage and raise fire, to find the river Uji, its waters clear and clean, to take shelter when the weather turned dire. And all these tasks she gladly did, for glee now blossomed in her heart, and transpired to outwit her gloom. But how long could this be? Nellack too was versed enough in woodland lore, though he found scant delight in a wild life. All comfort he'd forsworn he missed most sore, and everywhere were beasts and beetles rife. Was this his future? A bed on muddy floors? Skinning maggoty deer with a stolen knife? falling to degradation more and more. He thought back to all he had left behind, which now looked not so foul as once it had, nor life within the woods a fate more kind. Foolish then his acts seemed, deeds of a cad, yet for his brother's future's sake he must find some way to make long years bearable, and forge fair days from all to which he was consigned. His thought and eye soon turned towards the north, to lands scarce known beyond the Wolven Wood. Perhaps there a town dwelt, whence he might set forth to find therein a life worthy and good. Tarrying for neither planning nor thought, he moved to flee as swiftly as he could from the damp and dank his recklessness had wrought, to where the name of Nellack may stand forgot. Caleara found first naught but pure bliss, engulfed within the veil of endless trees. She deigned not think of all she had dismissed, craving no comfort nor any prior ease, delighting to be lost in the green abyss, till time begat familiarity, and day by day life felt the more amiss. In the keep or in the woods she was alone. No tree nor owl nor star answered her calls. Her bliss faltered, and loneliness, left prone since her flight, arose anew, and galled at being cast out. It tore her to the bone. Like before, no creature paid heed to her squalls. All her pain, she learned, she could not disown. Bright paths she ran through recently seemed bleak. Her daily labours turned to slavish toil. Melancholy's leeching hold left her weak. Her dream of lifelong freedom had been foiled. She despaired of her lofty dream, and meek she lay down, yielding to her mind's spoil, and closed her eyes, for now an end did she seek. But unlooked for, her eyes opened again, after a fever she'd taken had passed. Her body was weak and in constant pain, yet warmed by fire that she did not start, and wrapped in a blanket, though she had not lain in it during her stupor. Now with a start she turned and saw Nellack. Her life he'd sustained. Nellack had wound his way northward slowly through a brace of weeks, until resting one day beside a bend in the Uji, he heard above the breeze the sound of weeping, and following it he found beneath the tree Caleara, wasted and shivering, with not long to live, lest he intervene. Caleara saw this man, and thought she dreamed in the lingering grasp of delusion, and each time she fell back asleep she deemed she'd wake to see no more of this illusion. And yet as her senses slowly rallied, there still was this intruder in seclusion, sat near and silent beyond the realm of dreams. Standing and bowing, old habits recalled, Nellack began to tell of what had passed, but Caleara raised her hand and stalled his words, and hushed him each question he asked. She would not speak either, once more enthralled by a surely fated happening cast to her, and at once was her grief forestalled. The wolf and his servant sat and waited. Nellack knew nothing of her, not her name, nor her past, nor how she came to this place. He knew only the tune she hummed, the same she spluttered in sickness, but now she graced the air with her true voice. He knew her games and dances, and how laughter brightened her face, and soon he knew his heart was set aflame. She knew nothing of him but his heart, both kind and caring, whose like she had not seen. As with her kin, for him she had no part, no point, no purpose, no need of her had he, and still he tended her, and thus restart her resolve to live among the wolf's trees. She could endure, she knew, lest they moved apart. Nellack knew his task was done. He could leave and press on to a new life in northern lands, but now he wished not half so well to achieve this goal, unless he could leave hand in hand with his dear mystery. But he perceived in her contentment she'd not abandoned this home of hers, thus roots he'd try to weave. He stayed beside her through the long and chilly weeks. Together they dwelt, these two by fate paired, and all the while she would not hear him speak, yet cheerful all the same was the time they shared. And soon they slept beneath the same quilt, for heat, and soon each bathed, careless of what they bared, and soon the two were lovers, as was meet. A year passed swift beneath the canopy of a woodland corner which echoed mirth. Cherished days yielded hours of glee. Fair nights they passed entwined upon the earth, and soon their camp grew to a home worthy of two who meant to dwell in the woodlands, till all their long bright days ended peacefully. And still they spoke no words throughout this year, and scarce were they apart in those happy days, suffering no worldly words to interfere, nor any fear that either be borne away to smirch in any way their long-denied cheer. All their lives, perhaps, might they have had their way, but fate had plans for the lovers, that was clear. They took to venturing through their new domain, finding shallow caves, deep hollows, and streams with natural bounty stretched out every way. They wandered where they would, and mutely deemed the woods were theirs, and whatever they fain do within their realm was their right. They were free. till they found the wolven city, Shawltrain, overgrown, desolate, and abandoned. Tales once were told of this city of old, before they were extinguished by the church. To Nellack and Caleara, this cold and crumpled, empty, ivy-festooned dirge of a homeland was a dirge untold. All through the day and clear-skied nights they searched to see what answers this ruin did hold. Hands clasped, never leaving each other's sight, they stalked the streets, marked mingled blood and shadows, and wisps of ashen thatch near homes set alight. At midday they found a pit where black bones were heaped, a testament to the grim blight that had destroyed the city long ago, destroyed it all, maliciously, outright. Yet one more soul dwelt in defiled Shawltrain. The lovers found her when, with dawn nearing, to an almost pleasant grass-park they came. By now they thought there less cause for fearing. It was Nellack who saw it first, more profane than any horror left here festering. Forgetting his silence, a curse he exclaimed. Set on a broken chair in rotting raiment was a grinning skeleton, run clear through and pinioned by an iron spear which rent her heart in yesteryears, and yet this hew had failed, and as the young lovers bent unwilling eyes towards the corpse they knew, this fleshless body's life was not yet spent. No word it spoke, yet they could feel its greeting. It had no eyes, yet they could feel its stare. They sensed its satisfaction at this meeting, and heard in their souls that it had brought them there. One arm, devoid of muscle, in a fleeting ghastly flick lifted from the crumbled chair, and brushed against the spear, macabrely treating. "Remove it," was the bidding. "Remove it." They felt the command again and again, and stood unmoving, frightened from their wits. Such living death was beyond the world's ken, and growing terror drove them almost to flit away back down the desolate lanes to their trees, and all this lunacy forget. But ere their legs could bear them from the dead, out of the air they heard whispers emerge, hints of pipes and lute strings playing not dread as the grim surround suggested, no dirge, but music for a wedding, scents of bread and roasted meat and cakes and stew all merged, then the sound of shoes on grass, where the phantoms tread. Last came the sight of the ghosts of the wolf's folk. A memory played viscous before their eyes, a joyful wedding day in this dead place. Guests danced and sang and drank neath summer skies, whilst impish children pilfered snacks and raced about the flower-strewn grounds, where they vied with their fellows in games noisy and crazed. Over all this the matriarch did preside. The fleshless, deathless body on a chair, now to the sight seemed to be a woman, ancient in years and made weary by cares, hunched in her chair, eyes shut and her skin wan, her face buried beneath her silver hair, resting since the festivities began, left in peace to languish in the warm air. Minutes passed, and then a mighty sound of horns and drums marked the wedding's commencement. Athwart two woven rugs the guests sat down as the bride, groom, and all their attendants emerged, clad in brown jerkins or long green gowns, garb of the wolf's folk, earthen yet resplendent, colours of the wolf's faith, worldly yet proud. The bride was granddaughter to the matriarch. The groom was a hunter, in skill matched by none. Up to the sacred stone circle they marched, where waited the druid, the matriarch's son, leaning on his alder staff, smiling to mark how happy had his daughter now become. But ere they reached the circle, the day turned dark. New horns sounded from afar. Then came the roars of war dogs and men charging, scenting prey. Flames and screams flew out from behind smashed doors. The guests all stood, confused, shivering, afraid, to face a tide of fangs and swords trailing gore, killing every living thing they found that day. Armoured men, 300 strong, bringing slaughter. The woven folk lived lives of peace. They could not resist such sudden, senseless evil. Overwhelmed they died ere they understood why this horror was happening. Whose will, whose rancid will had brought death to their woods? But Nellack and Caleara knew the sigil emblazoned on each killer's surcoat. Gold hoods. The gold hood, as worn by St. Garahau as he led the charge against the twisted mages, he cast them and their demon master down, the first legend of the earliest age, which ended with the conquering saint crowned a king, and swiftly raising armies to wage bloody war on every evil he found. Many faiths and kings slavishly aped his deeds. Most recent and most hated by decent lands, the faith of Garahau, or the gold hood's blades. For saint and god they bore the sword and brand, ever striving to see evil unmade, and all its vulgar nests and dens unmanned. But their zealot eyes and meatless minds fain see evil in all whom they did not command. The young lovers who found Shal train by chance saw the young bride and groom overwhelmed by hounds. Caleara, enraged, took up a fallen branch and searched about herself, squinting till she found a killer, his sword red, and perchance to save more from his blade, she swiftly downed the branch. It passed straight through him, and she blanched. Nellack ran after his love to deter her, and saw her stroke pass through her foe as through air. The killer paid no heed and made no stir when struck. On he went with long strides to bear down on a fallen mother, who called after her fleeing children, "Tarry not to despair! Get out of the city! Escape these curs!" Nellack knelt down beside her, reaching out. He tried to help her stand, help her escape, but his hands passed straight through her, and without time to wonder at this new strangeness, shapes of metal, blade, hilt, gauntlet, throughout his chest sped, and the mother's entrails scraped, and Nellack's heart froze to hear her final shout. What few could flee were pursued by the horde, leaving the bodies of the wedding guests prone, pawed by stray looters whilst hounds engorged and stole warm meat. Over all this, on her throne, the matriarch observed, already gored by the iron spear, now left to die alone. But death, by law, must wait. She was the wolf's ward. Slowly the scene of slaughter faded back. The bodies and the flames all disappeared. The scores of scents from murder and sack vanished, leaving only the ruins long seared. And last, the screams, which now were distant and lacked the number of voices they first did hear, fell silent at last, with all the screamers hacked. Nellack and Caleara stood searching, she with her branch raised, he with shaking arms, for the recently salient raising. The foul, craven, unforgettable harm in what was now once more a pleasant clearing of a ruin to which nature had wrought charm. They saw only the strange skeletons staring. "Remove it," they heard again. "Remove it." Caleara did not hesitate now, and ran to where the matriarch waited, taking the rusting spear and wrenching it out. Nellack followed, not to hinder nor berate, but in the sudden custom for grief, he bowed low to the matriarch and touched his pate to his palms. Ever to share her pain was the vow. Slowly, with unnatural vitality, the matriarch pushed her worn bones upright. Her fingers fought against the wind mightily to touch the young ones who had lessened her plight. Neither of them could hold still easily. To see the fleshless bones draw near was a fright, but they held fast, trusting to civility. Hands grasped at their shoulders. Slithering on, the matriarch's arms closed behind their backs. Then, with sudden speed, her body fell upon Nellack and Caleara with a clack, and they flinched to feel this carcass they donned. They could not help but think that they were attacked. But it was an embrace to which they'd been drawn. "Long have I called to you both, drawing you." They felt these words like wind inside a shell. "Long have I whispered to your hearts, guiding you. It was I who called you to the wolf's wood to dwell, and I who chose the paths which drew you to each other. You'd fall in love, I knew that well, and long have I awaited you. I need you." She bid them sit down, and then long she told of the wolven creed and deeds, its life and strife, from the god in wolf's shape, Latul the old, who wrought 1/4 of the world for his wife to be, Sayeo, who is the moon to behold. On the history wove, through years when rife were the wolf's folk, and through the woods were sprawled. She told of a foolish war, wolf 'gainst hound, brother gods and all their children at arms, 2 generations' worth of blood-washed ground, till the brothers learned wisdom, halting their harm. Of their followers left alive, most found new paths, and those who stayed henceforth disarmed, the wolf and his folk to peace now were bound. Though listen turn led to the quiet and end the 2 lovers beheld, their life of peace, of quiet contentment, they could not defend themselves, and by day's end all were deceased. Shall train ransacked and left to descend out of sight and memory, all had ceased, with only corpses left for foxes to tend. Until now, with 2 new acolytes come. When all was told, the matriarch knelt down and took Caleara's hands in her own. "I have a question, girl. Look you around and see where I have dwelt long years alone. This city was once the wolf's hallowed ground. Will you inherit and restore these stones? Be named my daughter and take up the wolf's crown. And you, boy, will you at last take her hand? Will you marry she whom you love this day?
become my son-in-law, and all this land governed by her side. The mark of death allay by leading you folk here, teach them to stand against the inevitable future fray. Will you both make a third woven kingdom grand?
Nellack and Caleara sat and thought, looking to each other, conversing silent. They soon knew the other believed they ought to do this thing. Destiny surely sent them to this place, and both he and she had sought a home to belong in. It was while they went to the wolf's woods. Now to home they'd been brought. And as for marriage, what question was there for two lovers linked together by fate? The year they'd spent together, free from care, had proved beyond all doubt to both that no mate beside the one they'd chanced upon was there. It was time for them to be wed, and create a home for those who, like they'd been, were ensnared. They washed and mended old wedding raiment, stashed in a house that had burnt not so well. From rags and sticks they fashioned makeshift tents, and down them, in defiance of the knell that had long lingered in this shrine of lament, the lovers emerged as fair summer rains fell, and down in rotten rugs till the circle went. There the matriarch stood, her son's staff gripped tight, and marked how happy her daughter had become, and her betrothed too. She thought they might indeed revive the woven kingdom from its wrongful death, but even if the fight was too great, at least she'd live to see the scum who'd butchered all thwarted ere night. She spoke the words of the ceremony. Nellack and Caleara spoke at last. He heard her pledge herself with words like honey. She heard him do the same in words of brass. At last, to signify their matrimony, the two clasped their hands atop the outstretched staff, and thus they stood, now reborn and married. There too, at last, each learned the other's name. The matriarch's hand slipped suddenly to her side, and in a swoon she fell upon the stone. Her children watched in sudden shock, their eyes wide, but her phantom voice inside their heads groaned,
Do not fear, my loves. 'Tis past my time to die. My task is done, the curse lifted from my bones. Farewell. Live long for me, and with joy abide.
Long they both wept for the mother they had found. Then taking up her bones, they laid her to rest inside a barrow her kin raised out the ground. Evermore, peaceful earth, not iron-pierced breast, would cause her stillness. Sleep, painless, unbound. Nellack and Caleara, at her behest, went home, and began to plan for the wolf's test. Of Nellack and Caleara, more tales are told. Of the refugees and outcasts they took to their banner, of wolf cities fourfold, of their son, who hight the father of rooks, and their daughter the bane of hooded gold, of the wall all the wolven quarter shook, and yet more lost to reckoning and untold. But this tale ends with a fair summer's night, where the newly-wed pair stood beneath the moon. Neither could have hoped to find love with their flight from cosy hearths and lives they strove to impugn. Now here they were, their quest ending in delight, a future of greatness waiting to be hewn by those whom the world had lost from its sight.